let's go out to Texas. We've got John, he, him pronouns, and is a theist, and wants to talk to us a little bit about atheism, I think, and how to have a discussion. So, hey, John, you're on with Secular Rarity and Tom. What do you got for us?
Hi, I hope you guys are having a good day. Thank you for taking my call. You know, this is your show, and I appreciate that you're letting me be on it. So I haven't watched much of the show, but just because I don't have much time, but I think it's very interesting. But you guys always seem to have a really good response, so I'm not anticipating that anything I say is going to be new or is going to be like a got you. But I just was going to try to have a discussion anyways. Just wanted to preface with that. So first off, and I'm so sorry, you guys probably get this all the time, but I just wanted, if you could give me like a really brief description of why you do this show, like why you personally do this show, want to have this discussion in somewhat of a public spotlight, and then if I could have a response to that.
Sure. Tom, what are your thoughts, man? Why do you do this? Why do you do this in your podcast, and what do you think on that?
Yeah, I think conversations are really the only tool that we have to affect change. And for myself, I come from a certain standpoint of it's interesting to me to learn where other people are on the spectrum of this crazy thing that we call life. I made some mistakes. I've done some good things. And I guess for me, participating in things like this with the opportunity to have a conversation with folks like you, John, to understand the same question on your side. Why do we believe the things that we believe? Mm-hmm. And is there a better way that we could all, live our lives so that we can maximize the amount of good and minimize the amount of bad? Generally, that's the idea from my side here. So engaging in conversations and trying to understand and affect change.
Yeah. And
myself, nothing to poke at in that answer. That was a really good one.
Well, okay. So for myself, John, there's a couple of different reasons. One, in part, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't at least a little bit of a selfishness to it. I do just enjoy having difficult conversations where two people are laying out their understandings of a particular nuanced point and trying to get to some kind of middle ground. I do really value that. I do also really value, having good reasons for accepting certain things as true. On top of that, I would say that there is a little bit of that more altruistic feel too, which is me being in the place where I am in the United States. I firsthand have seen some of the absolute horrible things that happen when it comes to, bad epistemology and bad ideologies. And so I want to minimize that as much as possible. So yeah, I think both of us, Tom and I, are kind of in a similar boat. So.
Okay. Well, yeah, those were like really, really awesome responses. I was kind of hoping you'd say something that I could like take a jab at, but those were just really so I guess like a lot of times what happens is I think that people try to have so like the idea of God or a creator existing or not existing is strictly in my opinion, I'm not an intellectual, but it's strictly a philosophical question, right? So what I was going to say is that a lot of times people
can I jump in? Hang on, real quick, John. I just want to jump in real quick because I think in general what you said there is probably accurate, but there are certain claims that when made about a God, it wouldn't be just philosophical, right? Like if explicitly somebody said, God made my car start, that's something that's very, very physical and would very much be something that we could test, right? But I think a lot of what goes on in these conversations is more philosophical, but not all of
it. Sure. Okay, yeah. So, but anyways, what I was kind of trying to get at is a lot of people, I think, try to, and this isn't the brunt of what I was trying to talk about. I don't want to take too much time. But a lot of people who have these conversations, it's about like separation of church and state, for example, which I would absolutely agree with. But this issue has nothing to do with the possibility of there being a creator or not being a creator. You know what I mean? Like I believe in a creator wholeheartedly. It's the most important aspect of my life. But I absolutely see the point in a separation of church and state. You know what I mean? So I feel like that should be more in a political realm, not in like this more philosophical realm. And I know it's convoluted, so it's like not entirely fair for me to say that. But do you see the point that I'm making?
Yeah, I think in a little bit here, and I'm going to throw it to you here in a second, Tom, to get your thoughts. In part, I understand what you're saying about the difference between like a political and philosophical, category when it comes to that specific discussion of separation of religion and government. That being said, I do see how it overlaps on both sides. And so I don't know that it could exclusively sit into one category or the other.
Yeah,
I do
you're right.
think,
Yeah.
I do think though, again, kind of what it sounded to me like the core of what you were getting at there, John, regarding, maybe it's more important that we discuss with people who are trying to get rid of that separation of church and state and try and,
Yeah.
have conversation with them that convinces them that's not the right path before we go down that route of, really harping on whether or not their particular version of God exists. For me personally, the way I look at it is this: if you're a God believer, if you're a religious person of some kind, or you have some belief in some supernatural something, you aren't as much of a threat in my eyes in terms of the general well-being of people across this country and world as the individuals who are actively trying to put in place laws that specifically target and harm people, right? And so if
Sure,
you're
well, yeah,
somebody who if you're somebody who stands up and says, hey, look, I'm all in favor of trans rights, I also happen to be Jewish. Like, brother, you're on my team. You were on my team
yeah,
because unfortunately there are so many others out there that use that religion to cause such drastic harm. But yeah, let me throw it over to Tom real quick, John, and then we'll get your thoughts.
And
Okay.
I just wanted to do like a real. Can we?
Sure.
Or you can say something on that too. But it seems like you have every right to say what you just said about that. I just kind of wanted to briefly express my desire that I think these things should be two separate categories. But it's not that important to me. Could I get maybe more to like the meat of what I wanted to talk about?
Sure. Go ahead, and I'll let Tom respond to that. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I just wanted to say I think in modern times. I think the assumption is that atheism has the intellectual high ground. And, there's a lot of good reason for that, too. And there's a lot of things that religious people have done to kind of allow that to happen. But I just wanted to say I think it's a lot more complex than a lot of the arguments that atheists make today. So, for example, there's one group on one side, and all they have is their subjective perception, right? And they view the world through this. Okay, so these groups of people think there's more than meets the eye. They realize that they're in existence. They realize that they didn't create themselves. It's a complex world that we live in. It's a complex world within ourselves, right? And our thoughts and things like this. So they say, okay, look, I'm not in control of myself. I didn't create myself. I choose to have the belief, not the knowledge, but the belief that there is something greater than me. There's something that created me. There's no scientific objective knowledge to support this, but yet this is the beliefs of that group of people. So then there's another group of people that say, no, look, this natural world, this world of matter, that's all that there is. That's all that there can be. There's no reason to think that there's anything more than meets the eye. But the problem is that this group of people, there's no objective scientific evidence to support this claim either. And I'm speaking in a very broad sense.
Yeah. No worries. But hang on just a second, John, because you've given us a lot of good stuff there, and I think that's worth just kind of saying some stuff back, because I thought a lot of it was really good. Tom, give us your thoughts on that real quick, and then we'll kick it back over to you, John.
Sure. I think it comes down to, John, and I appreciate that you're coming at this from a really rational standpoint. I think there's variance here, right? But from my perspective, I imagine from SR's perspective as well, we're not making the claim that like there's nothing out there. We're just saying we don't know, right? You're coming at this from an angle of like you were born in this certain geographic area. I can make a number of predictions based on the zip code you were born in about your characteristics. One of them being religious views. Sounds like you're dialing from the U.S., like Texas, right there, right? So, like, what are the odds that you're not Muslim? Yeah, they're somewhat high there, right?
I don't want to get into specifically what I am, but I wouldn't explicitly say that that's a correct statement.
Well, so
okay.
let me shout a little bit. Hang on a second.
Like. Mm-hmm.
No. All good, John. No worries. Just give me a second here, because I think there was a good bit of stuff that you had said that I do think is worthwhile to just kind of touch on a little. One of the things you were making a distinction between the groups of people, and you were saying basically there's this one side that kind of still has this feeling that there's something else out there, even though they don't necessarily have the total concrete, solid bullet point proof for it. And then on the other side, you've got these people who are like saying, oh no, it's probably not that thing, but they don't have anything like hardcore solid proof that like says counter. And I think that's a really interesting point. And the reason that I say that is because there are so many things for every single one of us right here, right now. Like, I guarantee this, okay? There is something that you don't believe in, John, and somebody else in your life does, and they don't have any good reason to believe it. And you know that the evidence is not there to be accepting the fact that leprechauns are riding unicorns every Thursday from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. down the main street in your town, right? Like there is no reason to accept that, but somebody out there believes that. And my question for you is, did you ever once ask yourself if you had that concrete proof that disproved that? And most likely not.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. So I would say that the idea of there being a creator or not a creator, it's by definition, it's a lot more abstract than something as literal as a leprechaun riding a unicorn, right? So that would be a part of material existence. So it's a little bit different than saying something created me and that's my ultimate truth. Right. So for
that's
example,
fair. But the issue is if you make something so ambiguous, if from the beginning, by definition, something is so ambiguous as to be indistinguishable from all of these other things, then you're in the same boat as the unicorn and the leprechaun. You're in that exact same boat, because what you have is, on one side, you have something that is extremely well defined, that has absolutely no supporting evidence. And on the other side, you have something that is so ambiguous that either anything out there could be evidence, or you just have nothing. And so again, you're kind of in that same boat, right?
So I know I would disagree with you, because it's kind of just an unfortunate or fortunate, we don't truly understand. But the I guess the hard reality is that, the objective truth, objective reality, it's gonna be abstract, regardless of what that reality is. It's gonna be abstract. I didn't invent that. I didn't decide that. However, the truth with a capital T actually is. It's gonna be pretty darn abstract, right? So we can't just say, oh, it's abstract, so therefore, because whether there's a creator or not a creator, we are dealing. This is a discussion of the abstract. So I don't really like that argument of saying, oh, if something is abstract, then that just isn't going to work. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Real quick, Tom. I'm sorry. I know. Just real quick, because what I said wasn't that it was abstract, right? It wasn't that it just is ambiguous. It is that by design, it is purposefully so abstract or ambiguous as to make it almost impossible to fully distinguish if something is actually in support or against it. Like when people say things like, well, God is just love. Well, that's nonsense, because we understand what love is, at least to a degree. Love is still ambiguous and abstract, but at least has defining characteristics. And when you just interchange other ambiguous things with that, that's where I think the difficulty comes in. But I'm sorry, I've been talking too much. Let me let Tom come in for a second.
No, I think you you guys hashed it out like if you're making the words meaningless, like you just keep going down and say God's just whatever. Like, okay, like sure, but we still don't have really good reasons. I'm with you. Maybe there's something, I don't know, but I'm not going to call the ball right now because I just don't have any good reasons, and I've taken enough hallucinogens to know that you can be tricked pretty easily.
Yeah,
sure.
That's a good point.
Sure. So here, I'll ask this question. So like what percentage of, so here, the reason that I wanted to talk about this, and I know this isn't entirely fair because this isn't the premise of this show, but it's the premise of the Atheist Experience show, is that, it's proved to me that a God exists, right? That's the premise. Yeah. But so what I'm trying to say is that that's a dishonest premise, because both arguments, either for a creator or for a lack of creator, are on an even playing field, so to speak.
I don't think so.
Does that make sense? Because, okay, so what
percentage
of objective truth do you think? No, just let me ask this question, please. I feel like I've been pretty respectful to you guys' responses.
You've been just fine, John. Go ahead.
So what percentage of objective truth do you think you or just the general public is aware of? Like, what if you had to put a percentage?
I have no idea, and I don't know how you would calculate that.
Sir, I don't understand the question, or why.
I don't think there's a way to calculate that. We could wax philosophically as we sit in our basement smoking doobs, bro. But like that is unimportant in my opinion, unless you can justify as to why that would be super important.
Well, it's important because the whole importance of this discussion is it not?
Well, you cut out a little bit, but let me clarify just a bit. If the question that you're asking has to do with the amount of objective, capital T, outside of you and me truth that I, Tom, you, or the collective humanity currently possesses, I just don't see how that is valuable at all. Because if the answer is 99%, that tells us nothing about the 1%. We can't make any claims. If the answer is 1%, then it still tells us nothing about the 99% and we can't make any claims. So in either boat, no matter what the amount of knowledge is that we collectively hold, it doesn't change anything about the knowledge that we don't hold. Like, it's still not knowledge that we have.
My point is that everything that we think that we see, it comes from subjective perception. It comes from subjective knowledge. Okay, so we have somewhat of a grasp, each individual, I was a large grasp on subjective experience, but these discussions.
Oh, you're cutting in a little bit in and out, John. I could just be a connection thing. If you could just say that real quick again, and then we'll probably let you go here in a sec, because we've been talking for a good minute and it's been a good call. But finish up that thought, and then I'll let Tom kind of say some stuff. I strongly disagree with the premise that that thinking about about what aspects of objective truth we understand, what we can comprehend. I disagree that that's unimportant. I think that's the most important thing. Everything that we understand is through subjective truth, subjective experience, right? And then we try to portray, based off of that, some sort of objective reality. And you're saying that that doesn't matter, but then how can we have an honest discussion if that doesn't matter? Isn't that the whole point? Well, in fairness, what I said specifically was that the amount of objective truth that we don't currently possess, how large or small that is, isn't important for the objective truth that we do possess, or for understanding that objective truth we don't possess. Does that make sense? Like, if we don't know 50% of a book, we can't make any claims about that book. If we, on the other hand, don't know only 1% of that book, guess what we still can't do about that 1%? So it just doesn't matter.
Okay, well, it definitely matters. So, for example, if we could say, oh, we only know 1% of, and I mean consciousness, time, space. If we only understand, I would say it would be 0.000, count the zeros. And if that is true, then we are inevitably on a level playing field with our adversary, with our intellectual adversaries when having the discussion about a creator or a lack of a creator. Does that make sense?
No. So it's like the premise that you're talking about. It sounds like your thing is you disagree with the premise that you have to provide evidence for a claim to believe that claim, right? The atheist experience isn't making the argument of we believe this negative claim. They're saying nothing, right? I have no reason to believe the thing that you're saying. So I can just make all these things. Like the reason why your argument doesn't make sense is the same reason as if I believed any other thing. I think it's Hercules and Zeus and like all of that. Why does that not make sense? Like can the atheist not say like I need evidence for this? Right? It's the same thing.
Of course you can say that. Yeah, no, that's totally fair. But what I'm saying is that you have a subjective truth that isn't backed by objective truth. I have a subjective truth that also isn't backed by objective truth. So I'm just trying to say we're on an even playing field. That's the only argument.
No. Well, because we're not making a positive assertion about something.
Right.
So we don't need to. I don't need to prove something that I'm not trying to prove. Right. I'm not trying to prove anything.
We're not saying the same thing, just swapping out X. You're not saying I believe X.
Yeah.
And my response to that is I believe negative X. Like that isn't necessarily, if that were the case, I would agree. But if the case is one side says, I think leprechauns are riding unicorns down the main street of my town from 7 to 9 p.m. And the other side says, I don't believe that.
Yeah, here's what I don't believe. I don't believe unicorns are riding. Like, I'm not saying that. You just haven't given me any of these unicorn videos.
Yeah. But I think, honestly, John...
not making the claim... Can I just ask one more question? I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah. No, go ahead. We've been on the call for a bit, but yeah, finish up here and we'll go on. No, you're good.
So are you not making the claim for a lack of a creator then?
I take the stance, and this is me personally, John. This is not everybody, okay? I personally take the stance to say, I accept the negative claim that God does not exist for every version of God I have ever been described. Every single one out there fails logically or does not have any evidence to meet the burden of proof. Is it possible that there is a version of God out there that ontologically 100% exists that I have never heard of? Yes. Yes, that is possible. I leave that open. But every single version of God that I have ever been described, I take that hardcore stance of saying, I do not accept that it exists. And I do believe that I have reasons to point to for that, whether it's a logical inconsistency or a just lack of any, determining evidence that would push it over that line. So, and that's just a me.
So maybe
not everybody takes that.
So maybe it sounds like maybe the issue is that we agree a little bit more than we're realizing, which is often the case.
Hey, but that's good, John. I think that's a great freaking place to stop, man. I love ending on a high note and some agreement. So thank you so much, by the way, John. And please do call us back in next week or in the future, because I think this was a good discussion.
Perhaps.
So
yeah, maybe we can delve deeper into like what you were just talking about of like why you dispute all those claims.
Yeah, I'd absolutely love to do that.
But yeah, I appreciate you guys. This is great. You guys have good minds.
Hey,
appreciate
thanks so
you,
much,
John.
Yeah, we do. That was good. That was a good way to start the show. I always love a call like that. And I do. I think he's right. I think there is oftentimes more, both sides, both interlocutors agree on than disagree. And I think it's valuable for us to point that out,
Yeah. I think the only disagreement there is like how much we agree.
Right? Yeah.
John, you agree. We're just trying to come on. You're with us here.